You are now free to think, ask questions, disagree, discuss as we study the Word. Does that look any better? Seem like you getting better light? Okay, we'll see what it looks like on the recording. See whether that really works pretty good. Just have to keep myself reminded to not look over there. I'm blinded and I can't see my text. We need to get us some of those fancy umbrella lights, you know.
Yeah.
Pick some of those up one of these days. Okay, Genesis chapter 8, and kind of coming, through the flood. We'll move down through towards after the flood as we're going through this series in the first 11 chapters of Genesis. I'm looking forward to the next study we're going to do as we get over into the book of Romans, and we're going to begin to bring all these things, all this for like 3 years of groundwork we've been putting in place. We're going to start to see all that come together. And as we begin to go through Romans and we study our education, I think you're going to really get maybe a new understanding of those things, and some of those things be a lot clearer than maybe what we've ever seen. So let's go ahead and read here. Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. God remembered Noah and every living thing and all cattle that was with him in the ark. Now, I don't want us to get the idea, that God was up in heaven and he's up there one day. Oh no! Like he'd forgotten all about Noah, and they're down there in the ark looking up, wondering, when are we going to be, So Noah, when can we get out of this thing? I don't know, God said he to. Okay, Noah, you can go ahead and get out now. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like God forgot all about it. It means that he deliberately acknowledged, and the word I'm looking for, I can't find it up here. But he reiterated the covenant that he had made with Noah, the promise that he'd given him, that he would save him. And everything that they did, the way they built the ark, they did it the way God said, they followed all the instructions, and it worked. Because here they were, they had drifted around and all that churning for 150 days, and they just kind of drifted as the water began to go down for about another 150 days or so, and so on. Finally, they landed on Ararat and all that, and so there they were, ready to go off. So God remembered the word He gave to Noah, and He kept His, He kept His word. He fulfilled it. And after they landed and the flood was over, Noah and his family, they knew they had survived it. I'm sure they were amazed after it was all over, and they thought about that. Man, God did exactly what He said He was going to do. He judged the world and destroyed everything from off the face of the earth, just like He said He was going to do. So, remember them, and He made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. Assuaged means it's like a deliberate action to make something stop or cease to have influence and begin to diminish. So, kind of a definition there. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually. After the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. Now, if the waters returned from off the earth continually for about 150 days, took them to all go down and run back into the ocean basins, what occurred on the land while all that water was going down? You had a massive amount of erosion, so that a lot of the geographic features that we see today, many of the canyons, many of the river, probably all of our major river valleys in the whole world were created as the water ran down. As it went down, and you had this massive, flood waters flooding over the land as it went back into the ocean basins, and of created a lot of really additional flood sediment after it had set there, and all these newly formed sediment layers, and when the water went down, it eroded through all of that. And that's why we have, say, out west of here in the hill country, that's basically how those limestone hills were formed. Because if you look at them, they're all formed out of, sediment layers. And when you can see those sediment layers in the side of those hills, water washed that out. Well, it didn't do it slowly over millions of years, it did it rapidly as the flood water was running down. So, the world we see today shows abundant evidence of having been flooded by a massive flood, worldwide flood. Go ahead.
You know that magazine that's back there, the article about the mammoth that they found?
Yeah.
If you read in that, it says something about that in that area over there, they've also found shark's teeth.
Yeah.
And they said evidently, all that was underwater at some point.
We find shark's teeth, in the creek all the time, as well as other fossils. And they're in the same layer that, they call the Pleistocene layer, in the same layer where those mammoth fossils are found. And here's another thing. You can find fossils of mosasaur and tylosaur, which was a huge, like aquatic reptile. Basically, they were dinosaurs, but they, swam. They were the kind with the paddle feet, the long, skinny neck and all that. Tylosaur did. Mosasaur looked kind of like an alligator with paddle feet. You find those here. And the thing is, you find them in layers above the layer that mammoth was found in. So how did that happen? And remember those fossils we found over on the Lewis Place? Well, those were, clam fossils in that gray shale layer that was above the layer where that mammoth, fossil was found as far as altitude-wise. So, be some interesting geology to figure that out. How did that happen, So, yeah, there are things in the fossil record that just don't support evolution in long ages of time. So, the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. So this was in the 600th year of Noah's life. So the 7th month of the 600th year of his life. Here's a picture of Mount Ararat, and you can see I think this is some kind of a monastery or something. There's some remains of some very ancient monasteries around Mount Ararat, and I'm thinking this part right here is the Ahura Gorge. This is the part where they think Noah's Ark has broken apart and scattered down this Ahura Gorge.Ey've been looking for it, if I understand right, up kind of on this ice field right here has been their search area, because eyewitness reports and aerial photographs and satellite images put what they believe to be the ark, or what possibly could have been the ark, somewhere up on this ice field. Now, Ararat has changed a lot since Noah's flood, because it is an active volcano, and it's erupted a few times, and it's kind of steadily a growing mountain, like a lot of volcanic mountains are. So a lot has changed since Noah, if that is in fact the mountain that the ark came to rest on.
What's the elevation of that?
Elevation is like 17,000 feet at the very top. So anyway, I'll be glad when the film Finding Noah with our friend Aaron Judkins, when that comes out. It's a good film. I'm glad we'll watch it here, or we'll find out where it's going. Maybe we can go see it. Yeah, they climbed all the way up there, and they had a first base camp was at like 10,000, and then another one at 14,000, and then went up to the summit. They went to the summit and then came down and surveyed and excavated. And I think that's kind of the area they were looking in. So yeah, it's way up there.
How would you find, with it being wood, how would it have stayed intact all this time? Would there be any, residual
Yeah.
stuff left over?
Here's what they believe. That, okay, Noah built the ark. It was very strong. Plus, he sealed it with pitch, which is probably either a pine pitch or, I know Dr. Bob believes it was like a birch bark resin type pitch. And so all of the wood was sealed and glued together with this, birch bark rosin, which would have preserved the wood. Plus, if it landed up there, and let's say that Ararat has gained, I don't know, even 3,000 or 4,000 feet in elevation over the last, 4,500 years since the flood. Well, the ark still then would have been at, 10 or 11,000 feet. So it would have been very high up there in cold temperatures, and it would have been very dry.
Right.
Plus, if it became encased in ice within, I don't know, 100 years, that also would have preserved it. So it's possible that when they landed on the ark and they, took the sides off and they got out and they left it, it could be they just abandoned it. I've often wondered if, maybe they salvaged the lumber because they needed firewood and they needed building materials and things like that. And it's possible, that they may have salvaged the lumber from it. And so it could be. It's possible that it could have been landed on one of the other mountains of that mountain chain. The reason they searched there is because the ancient, or the people that live around there, that they've been there from time immemorial, they believe it's up there because their ancestors, going all the way back, claim that Noah's Ark is up there. And eyewitness accounts for centuries back claim that people have been up there before the volcanic eruption that happened, there's really a major earthquake that created the Ahora Gorge and kind of altered some of this up there. Eyewitness accounts said they saw like a big box sticking out of the glacier. They claimed they saw it. And there's people who claim they, like George Hagopian and Ed Davis, that had been there and seen it, way back. And so that's why they believe that it's up there,
Is it like Turkey or?
Yeah, that's Turkey, Armenia, and Iran. All kind of border right there on Mount Ararat, and they all fight. Plus the Kurds are in there, and they've been completely run out of there. That's kind of their ancestral homeland, and so they're fighting, and yeah, it's dangerous.
They just uncovered something there in Turkey, like a old chapel, not chapel, but
Yeah. Some of the oldest archaeological remains that they know, like cities, villages and things, are in Turkey, which makes sense because, that would have been the area where when they first came down out of the ark and they first, began to populate and build cities, it would have been in that area.
Carson, you talk about the chance of it surviving.
Uh-huh.
If you've ever been to Colorado and you get up in the high where they have the mining.
Oh, yeah.
And you get above the humidity and
Yeah.
the wood doesn't rot.
No.
It stays there forever.
It
So
stays there.
the altitude and the temperature is a perfect preserve.
It is. It sure is. Those rails going in and out of those mines. There
Absolutely.
hadn't been a car in and out of there for 100 years. That rail just as shiny as it can be. Yeah, sure is. Go ahead.
Could this mountain range have been altered? I mean, you say there's a lot of people in that area that are fighting over territory, and could that have affected the landscape of the mountain and all this dispute?
Probably not, because they shoot at each other with rifles and cannons and stuff. They might could cause a snow avalanche or something once in a while, but now probably, they haven't really affected the terrain of the mountain. Because it's too big. I mean, it's really, I don't know how many miles away this photograph is taken of, but, you know, it's probably 30 miles from, you know, from where this photograph is taken. So it's big. And one of the things that kind of impressed us about the film was that you get a sense of that, how big it is and how hard it is to climb that mountain. Aaron said that going up that mountain, it's like boulders. It's not just, you know, smooth or kind of sandy ground or anything like. He said it's like boulders, and they're boulders that would be as big as that table. He said, so you're coming up there with your 80-pound pack and all your stuff, and you have to, you know, climb up on that boulder, and then the next step is just like that. This is for 3,000 feet. That's what it's like, you know, climbing up there. So it's tough. Yeah,
It's on the old long.
yeah, you leave me out. Don't invite me on that. We told him, if you go back, don't invite me because I'd never make it.
I'll do it that weekend.
You could always get a sled and tow it behind you.
I guess.
You said that was an active volcano?
Yeah, it is. You know, it's not like to the point of spewing out lava and stuff, but as far as like having, you know, earthquake activity, and it's always moving. One of the things that they have to be very careful of when they're climbing up the mountain, because as you can see, a lot of it's very steep, and the mountain will shake, and it will shake those rocks loose. So they said, you'll be climbing up, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, rocks, basketball-sized rocks, are just, you know, coming down on top of it. So you have to be very careful and watch out for those kind of things. But it's mainly earthquake activity. But it's not impossible, you know, for it to spew some steam or something. But it's not all that active in that, as far as that goes. But it is an active, you know, volcanic mountain and earthquake, you know, zone and all that.
What does Ararat mean?
Ararat is that goes, if I remember this right, it goes back to the name of one of Noah's either grandson or great-grandson, which I believe it was one of Japheth's grandsons who settled in Armenia. And when it says like it landed in the mountains of Ararat, it means, oh, okay, written from Moses' perspective, looking back on it, he said that's where it landed in the mountains of Ararat. The people in Moses' day reading that would have known who that was talking about. So it says mountains of Ararat. It's not really talking about a place, it's talking about a person, because the geographic location was named for the patriarch who went there and settled and was the patriarch of that area. So that's kind of where the Armenians came from, if I remember that right. I think that's correct. I've got a really good book. In fact, I need to see if I can get copies of that book. It's a little small book. It's called the 16 Ancestors of All Mankind. It goes through there, and it gives the 16 grandsons of Noah, and you know they were the sons of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and it gives a rundown of where they settled, where, you know, they spread out to, in the locations that are named after them. So, all right. So there's a pretty good shot of Mount Ararat and some of the things there. Whether or not they'll ever find the ark, but don't know. The glacier over the last probably 20 years has increased on the mountain, and now it doesn't melt off, it doesn't go away. So right now, this area up here is where they search. It's under about 90 feet of ice. So to find anything there would be extremely difficult. Possible, but you just have to wait and see. The waters decrease continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. So at some point they came and the ark ground, or they felt it hit land and it stopped, you know, and it's stopped, didn't move anymore. So as they looked out, and this gives us an indication that however the window in the ark was constructed, apparently they had to have been able to see out because they could see the tops of the mountains. As they watched the water, hey, one morning they got up, hey, I can see a top of a mountain over there, They couldn't see the one they were sitting on, but they could, they could see. So they knew the water was continuing to go down.
Can you imagine how exciting that must have been to them?
Oh, yeah.
To know that we're going to get off of this.
Yeah, because they've been in there 10 months, They are ready to get out of that boat.
The boat had to be right.
Oh, it stunk in there, man. It's, stunk and was just bad. Think about it, just being cooped up with 7 other people in that boat. Of course, I'm sure they had stuff to do. They were busy all the time, and it was pretty big, so they could kind of spread out in there, but still. So, anyway, we began to see the mountains. It came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Now, I got to think, I wonder, why did he send out a raven? I think there's probably some reasons, specific reasons why he did. Probably more than even what I kind of came up with. There's some interesting things about a raven. Did you ever think about that? Why did he send out a raven? Why do you think that he sent a raven out first of all to go and see for what? What did he think it was going to, go? And did he think it would go and not come back if there was land, if it could find something, or
Are they more like scavengers than a...
Raven's an omnivore. It can eat meat or bugs or plants or whatever. A raven can live pretty much anywhere, and so they're a very versatile bird. Well, here's one thing, and I didn't know this until I got to thinking about this and kind of looking up some things. And really, amazingly, this was an original thought. This struck me. And I thought, okay, we have a lot of crows around here. We don't really have ravens here. We have crows. What's the difference between a crow and a raven? When a raven's a little bigger, they're both pretty intelligent. You can train a raven or a crow to do a lot of things, tricks and stuff. And it struck me, here's one of the main differences between a crow and a raven. When a crow flies, it constantly flaps its wings. Now it will sail down to land, but it always flaps its wings when it flies. A raven, like an eagle, a hawk, or a vulture, has the ability to soar. And if you've ever seen ravens, I know we don't have a lot of them around here, but if you've ever seen them, you might think they'll get out there, they like to live in canyons, mountains, and things like that. And I've been up on mountains. I remember way years ago in New Mexico, sitting up on a kind of a cliff type of thing, looking way down across this valley, and these ravens were down below me. They were big. I was used to seeing crows, but these ravens were big and just soaring round and round and round. So that thought struck me. That's probably one of the reasons why he sent a raven. Number one, it's an omnivore. It can live on anything. Plus, it can just soar. It doesn't have to have a place to land for a long period of time. So it could stay up there a long time if it didn't find any place to land. And also smart enough to find its way back if that's what it wanted to do. So that's probably one of the reasons why he sent the raven. And the raven went to and fro, until the waters were dried up. So apparently, it didn't come back. Here's my text messed up there. That was supposed to be funny. So anyway, here's the raven. My text didn't convert over. I converted the PowerPoint. Anybody remember that old poem, Edgar Allan Poe? But anyway, here's a picture of a raven and how they soar, step for long periods of time. So after sent out the raven and it didn't come back, so he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark. For the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Notice, no local flood. It specifically states they were on the whole face of the whole earth. He put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. So even though some of the mountains were being seen, those mountains were probably at a distance. The dove wasn't going to fly that far. You want to understand about dove. Now, when it says dove here, that's including kind of all species of doves, pigeons. You know, pigeons really are doves. They're just a, you know, like a big form of dove. Now, also, here again is some of the characteristics of these birds that Noah knew, and probably the reason why he chose these particular birds. First of all, a dove is always looking for a place to feed, a place to land, something like that. It's not going to get up there and soar and soar. It's not going to fly a long way off before it looks for a place to land. And a dove or pigeon both have a strong homing instinct. You know, homing pigeons. I mean, the people with pigeon races, you know, they still do that these days. We've always heard about homing pigeons. You can take them way off and they can find their way back. Send messages by them, and you know, World War II and all that kind of stuff. So this is one reason why he sent the dove out, because he knew it wouldn't stay, you know, it wasn't going to go away miles and miles away. If it didn't find something pretty quick, then it would come right back. And he knew it could find its way back. So the dove, good reason why he sent that. May have been a dove like this, may have been a, you know, what we think of as a pigeon or something like that. So it's interesting. It shows, you know, a lot of wisdom of Noah, and he understood these different animals and birds and, you know, their characteristics and things, and took advantage of that. So he stayed yet another 7 days, and again sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. He stayed yet another 7 days and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him anymore. Now, I'm thinking that probably with this dove that came back, and it had this olive leaf in its mouth, that was a pretty good assurance to Noah that plant life was starting to grow again. The olive leaf is an indication of that, not just because it also was a green living thing and it was beginning to grow. Olives are not the fastest growing plant in the world. In fact, olive trees grow very slow. And they don't, you know, they don't sprout really fast. So he probably knew that by the dove bringing an olive leaf, if there are olive trees sprouting and growing, then there have to be grass and other plants too. So he was investigating there. He wanted to find out, is anything growing out there? Is there dry land? You know, what are we going to find when we get out of this ark and we begin to spread out looking for something to means to survive? So it was encouraging to him. Let the dove out, it didn't come back. So he knew, well, that's good news. Because he knew there wasn't any predators out there, so it had to have found, and he knew that if the dove found a place that it liked and it was comfortable with, that was good news, because they could probably make it to. It came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. So here we find, really we can see that the really whole flood lasted about 375 days. It was in the, they weren't apparently in the ark just a little less than a year. Because remember, they went in on the second month of the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day. And so it says here in the 601st year, in the first month, not the second month, but the first month, the first day of the month, waters were dried up. Noah removed the covering of the ark, looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. So around about a year, they were in the ark, or round about before they came out and was able to spread out on the earth. So, but in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, If you remember in like chapter 7, it starts off, it tells us in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, was when the fountains were broken up and the rain started and the flood began on that day. So about a year and 10 days is how long the whole episode lasted. And so they took the covering off the ark and off they went. It's also interesting that if you remember, we talked about where it says that God shut them in the ark after they went in. Well, apparently when they landed, they didn't open the door. They just took, it says they took the covering off. Now, I don't know, maybe they opened the door and, got out and then began to take the cover off to let all the animals out. I don't know, but one way or another, they got out. And I'm sure probably all 8 people were there with, crowbars or whatever they had that ark. You talk about ready to get out of there. I'm sure they were. So, this may be too small. I meant to print off some more copies of this. I think I handed out some copies of this chart here a few weeks ago, and I forgot to make more copies of it. So I'll try to remember to make some of these. It's a handy thing to have because it gives a kind of a chronological rundown of the events through that year of the flood. All right. God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both the fowl and cattle, every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. So, I'm thinking that all of the animals began to, rapidly spread out and repopulate their species. This fits in with the biblical timeline of, what we believe of the flood, and how that at the time the ocean levels probably were a little lower. This due to, I'm not going to go way off, into the post-flood ice age theory, and I think it has a lot of merit. But several things accounted for the ocean levels being a little lower. And at that time, even though the continents had spread apart during the flood, most of them were still connected by land bridges. There's archaeological evidence that about 4,000 years ago, the ocean levels were lower, or about 300 feet lower than they are today. There's archaeological human remains at levels that could not possibly be there unless the ocean levels in ancient times had been that low. So anyway, regardless, the animals began to spread out and replenish the earth, reproduce. Noah went forth and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every fowl, whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. So apparently everything survived. Everything made it. Apparently nothing died during that year. Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So these are some interesting things here. We see one of the reasons why Noah took, 7 of each clean beast. He sacrificed some of those on the altar. Also, God stated that he was going to take away the curse from the ground, which, since the original ground had been totally destroyed, and kind of that curse on it was fulfilled. So God's stating here, he's not going to, put a new curse or another curse on the ground like he had done before. And he gives the reason why he's not going to. He won't have to. He makes this statement here. He says, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Well, for that reason right there, he would not have to curse the ground. Because do you remember the reason why he cursed the ground in the first place? He did that so that Adam would not physically be able to take dominion of the earth. You notice that order, I guess, mandate that God gave Adam to take dominion of the earth and to subdue it. You notice nowhere in there where he, told Adam, "Curses the ground going to be, you'll eat bread by the sweat of your brow." He never took that away from him. He never took that mandate away to take dominion of the earth. But he cursed the ground so that Adam would not be able to take dominion of the earth, and none of his descendants would not physically be able to. Because see, the original creation was so perfectly interconnected and tied together that it took a perfect creation to enable Adam to be able to do what God created him to do, which represent him and take dominion of the earth and subdue it. So, by the ground being cursed, Adam wouldn't be able to do that anymore. Now, God's making this statement. All right, now, let me back up here a second. The reason why God didn't take away the mandate for Adam to take dominion of the earth was because God still intended for a man to take dominion of the earth. Now, what man will it be who will one day take dominion of the earth for the Father and retake his possession for him? It will be the Lord Jesus Christ. Remember, Paul called Jesus the second Adam. He said, whereas by one man sin entered the world and death by sin and so forth. And over there in 1 Corinthians 15, he talks about, that Adam and so forth, that Christ is the second Adam and so forth. The second one created of God, without sin and so forth. So that's the reason why God didn't take that mandate away. He left that as a standing order, but He cursed the ground and so forth so that man would not be able to do that. Now, the only one that will be able to take dominion of the earth is one who is not subject to this curse, because he has no sin. So you see the genius of God and His plan and purpose, and how He works and engineers these things all the way from the beginning. And regardless of what Satan does or what man does, God's plan and purpose will be fulfilled. So that's why He didn't take that mandate away. And that's why He says this right here. He's not going to curse the ground anymore. He doesn't have to, because mankind, after he rebelled against God, and when sin came in and we were infected with that sin nature, and also by this time they would begin to see the genetic breakdown and the human genetic code and all that. Man had a built-in flaw that would then prevent him from being able to take dominion of the earth. So as mankind, if you look back over history, what have we been trying to do ever since, there were enough of them to even have any kind of a civilization? We've been trying to take dominion of the earth. We've been trying to take dominion of one another and, dominate other people. But He also said, He wouldn't smite any more ever living things He had done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So, this is something that we can be sure, regardless of global warming or anything else, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Now, this also gives us a clue that even during the future 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, when, things will be much better, Christ will reign, Israel will be the head of all the nations, and there will be peace and things on earth. But still, it's going to be like this. They're still going to sow seed and harvest, and there's still going to be summer and winter and rain and all those kind of things. So, promises from God to Noah and kind of telling him what's going on. But, and I'm not going to go way off into this, but it's interesting that it says God said, in his heart. So we assume that God told Noah all this. Maybe he didn't. Maybe Noah never knew this. Maybe God never said this to Noah. He might have said it to Moses when he was revealing to Moses, what to write and everything. Don't know. But anyway, we know that God did make the covenant with Noah. We'll look at that next time. All right, so we end there. We'll go to chapter 9 next time, and some interesting things there as we continue in this series and Noah and the flood. All right, anybody got any discussion, questions, or anything? All right. Oh, okay, yeah.